It's another 7-film day this weekend at the movies, including a comedy about stoner guys, a comedy about stoner girls, a historical drama, a historical musical, a crime drama, and 2 movies about dinosaurs. That and more is coming your way this weekend at the movies. Let's start with the dinosaur movies. The end of Oak Street is Jurassic Park meets The Walking Dead. No, there are no zombies, but there are dinosaurs like in Jurassic Park, and like in The Walking Dead, the story is basically about ordinary people, where they live, fighting to survive an existential threat. The end of Oak Street opens with a block party at the literal end of Oak Street. But what these friendly neighbors don't know is they're all about to face a pretty serious challenge that could mean the actual end of Oak Street. Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor star as Denise and Greg Platt, a fairly typical couple in the Midwest in the early 1980s, 1982 to be specific. They have tween kids, a daughter who's really into space. We hear her talk about Carl Sagan, and we see her reading a book by the astronauts who first landed on the moon. And her younger brother loves his dog, rides his bike around the neighborhood, deals with bullies, and admires from afar the pretty girl who recently moved into the neighborhood. The parents have struggles of their own. They have a dispute with their neighbor and problems in their marriage. Partly it's because of Greg's difficult current financial situation, but that and other reasons have led Denise to feel unhappy, and she is secretly writing a book about a woman who feels trapped in her life. No obvious parallels there. Well, all of those problems quickly fade into the background when, with a flash of light, their entire neighborhood, Oak Street and all, is somehow transported back to the Mesozoic era, the age of the dinosaurs. Quickly, this turns into a straight-up survival story, and just holding up in your house is not going to be enough to keep the dinosaurs at bay. The end of Oak Street is really well done. The special effects are top-notch, the acting is very strong, and the particular strength of this movie is its plotting. The way the story unfolds combines mystery and tension, and there are very real stakes pretty early on that keep us on the edge of our seat. In the end, we get an interesting twist explaining why all of this happened and how Oak Street just might not meet its end. I give the end of Oak Street 5 claps out of 5. Go and see it in a theater as soon as you can. And now to this past weekend's other dinosaur movie. This one, however, is meant for the kids, so it's not nearly as scary as the end of Oak Street. PAW Patrol the Dino Movie is another animated adventure in which we see our favorite rescue pups saving people, other pups, and even cats from all sorts of dangers on land, sea, and air using their very impressive vehicles and technology. After they save the day for the umpteenth time, they get caught in a storm at sea, which brings them to an island populated by dinosaurs, and they discover a pup named Rex who has made a home for himself there. Meanwhile, Humdinger has been released from prison, and with his kitty companions, he ends up on that same island for very different reasons, once again creating problems that the pups have to solve. The main protagonist in this Paw Patrol movie is Marshall, who is constantly struggling to not mess up and to be the kind of rescue pup that the others can truly depend on. This becoming something of a redemption story. This animated adventure features the voice talents of McKenna Grace, who seems to be in about half the movies released in 2026, along with Carter Young, Terry Crews, Jamila Jamil, Bill Nye, Jennifer Hudson, and Snoop Dogg. Paw Patrol, the Dino Movie, is a lot of fun. The way the story plays out, it makes sense to adults and provides plenty of thrills for the kids to enjoy. And the voice talent is really terrific in this. This is a movie that I highly recommend for families and even adults who, like me, went to see it without kids. I give Paw Patrol, the Dino Movie, 4 claps out of 5. I suggest you see it in a theater. And now we turn to this past weekend's 2 stoner comedies. The second one is really more of a stoner comedy than the first one, but there are drugs in both. Anyway, let's get on with it. Nimrods stars Mason Thames, Kyle Kaufman, and Ryan Faust as teenage boys who make up a band called the Analog Dogs, even though in a running gag, everybody that sees it written somehow reads it as Anal Dogs. Anyway, the guys in the Analog Dogs are big fans of Green Day, and they kind of elbow their way into a meet and greet in their hometown so they can talk to Green Day and give them their demo, which has 1 song on it. Shortly after meeting Green Day, they get a phone call in which they are offered an opportunity to open for Green Day at the Palladium in Los Angeles on New Year's Eve. The problem is the Analog Dogs live in Kansas City, Missouri, and none of them have a car. So they borrow the car of one of their brothers, end up having to change vehicles 2 more times, have various challenges and adventures along the way, but they are determined to make it to Los Angeles so they can open for Green Day. Also in the cast, we have McKenna Grace playing a teenage girl that the band meets on their journey, and one of them develops an interest in. We also have 2 veterans of the American TV series The Office, Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey, playing mothers of 2 of the boys. Nimrods is a fairly entertaining coming-of-age story. The 3 main characters are very different from each other, which keeps things pretty interesting, and the actors that play them are appealing and fun and interesting to watch. It's also fun to watch Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey in their role as moms. McKenna Grace, of course, brightens the screen every time she shows up, but even with all that going for it, I still can't help but feel that Nimrods is kind of silly, kind of slight, and ultimately fairly forgettable, but for now, it is a pleasant way to spend a little under 2 hours. So I give Nimrods 3 claps out of 5. I say it might be worth checking out, but no need to run to the theater. Wait and stream it. The Wrong Girls stars Kristen Stewart and Alia Shawkat as Frankie and Molly, 2 aimless 20-something roommates who don't have much going for them and are just kind of drifting through their lives trying to survive. They seem to have some money for pot, but not much else. When Frankie becomes aware that her ex-boyfriend is dating a new girl who looks exactly like her, she goes to a dance club to confront him. Well, the similarity in the looks between the 2 girls creates other problems when Lakeith Stanfield, playing a character only known as Not Metalhead Dave, passes a briefcase to Frankie thinking she's the other girl. And Frankie, or the other girl, is supposed to take this briefcase to someone, but she doesn't understand what's going on, so her and Molly open the briefcase and find an experimental psychedelic drug in there. Well, of course, they decide to take it. And this drug, which was supposed to be diluted first, but they didn't know that, so they didn't do that, enables them to develop telepathic abilities. They can read each other's minds. They can even hear what their cats are thinking. And the cats are voiced by Seth Rogen and Kumail Nanjiani. There are some Dutch gangsters who are trying to get this case back, and the girls are trying to sell it because they need the money. So in the midst of all this, there's some farce, there's a lot of interaction between some very different kinds of characters, and some fun along the way. The Wrong Girls is just ridiculous enough to be entertaining. Some of the more out there elements of the movie are part of its charm. It does have a terrific cast. It just doesn't have as many laughs as I would like in a comedy. In fact, I found myself laughing more at the minor roles that Kate McKinnon and Tony Hale and the Dutch Gangsters play than the film's two leads, which is something of a problem. But I still had a reasonably good time, and if you would like some light comedy fare of the stoner variety, I would give a mild recommendation to The Wrong Girls with 3 claps out of 5. I'd say you might want to check it out, but no need to run right to the theater. I'd say this one is one you can wait and stream. And now to a homespun tale of determination and resilience. The Rivals of Amziah King would probably better be titled The Trials of Amziah King, because more than a story about his rivals, this is really about the challenges that he and those in his circle face. Amziah King is played by Matthew McConaughey in his homespun best. The movie opens with a jam session of local bluegrass musicians who often play together simply for their mutual enjoyment and sometimes for an audience. Amziah is a beekeeper, but he's also a musician and kind of a Zen cowboy community member living in rural Oklahoma. And when a former foster daughter of his, played by native actress Angelina Lookingglass, comes back into town years later, he takes her under his wing and teaches her the beekeeping business. As he is talking about how a hive operates, there are clear parallels between what's going on in those beehives and what's going on in their mutually shared community. There's a lot of drama in this movie regarding, believe it or not, the beekeeping business in which Amziah says at one point, there are not a lot of nice people in this business. And we see that play out in increasingly dramatic fashion throughout the movie. About halfway through the movie, there is a very shocking event that changes this from a movie about beekeeping into a revenge movie. And that is where Kurt Russell's character comes in as a high-powered businessman who doesn't care what he has to do or who he has to hurt to enrich himself and get what he wants. The Rivals of Amziah King comes across as a low-budget indie, but that is intentional because it wants to strip down its story and its characters to show them in their true reality as simply members of a community. And Matthew McConaughey, as their de facto leader, shows that once again he is the master of down-home, home-style emotion. In fact, this movie reminds me of his previous movie, Mud, which he has said is one of his favorite projects. The young lady who plays his former foster child is a remarkable talent acting in her first feature film, and she really ends up carrying the movie in parts. Nothing against Matthew McConaughey, that's just the way the script was written, and she is more than up to the challenge. The film also uses some innovative and creative shooting and editing to help tell its story and make the movie even more interesting to watch than it already was. When the movie shifts from a movie about the beekeeping business to a revenge drama, unfortunately, some of the solutions that the filmmakers put on the screen seem worse than the problems that they were meant to address. Still, the plotting is interesting and intricate at times. You'll learn a lot about beekeeping, but more importantly, you'll develop a real appreciation for the kind of community portrayed in this movie. I give The Rivals of Amziah King 4 claps out of 5. See it in a theater if you can. And now for this past weekend's 2 history movies, a drama and a musical. And the musical happens to be the second filmed play that I have reviewed in the past month on this channel. 6, the musical Live, is a filmed version of the former Broadway play, and in this case, being performed in West London by the original cast members. The title refers to the 6 wives of Henry VIII. You may be familiar with the rhyme you may have learned in school: divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived, in a phrase that sums up the fate of each of the 6 wives of Henry VIII. And the 6 very talented singers, actors, dancers in this film are portraying their stories with a modern bent. For example, their costumes are reminiscent of the type of clothes that would be worn back then, but definitely have a modern flair to them. And as they each tell their stories, there is a modern sensibility and a lot of humor woven in between the historical facts. The plot for this play is that the 6 wives each think that they had the hardest time dealing with Henry VIII. So they each make their case, tell their story in an attempt to win some sort of competition and be named the wife who suffered the most with Henry VIII. They put an interesting modern twist on that story towards the end of the movie, and along the way, you learn a lot about history, specifically these 6 people, and you also gain a greater appreciation for how history can be retold in a modern musical way. 6 is very entertaining. The 6 women who play these wives each have their own personalities, which are put on full display and match very nicely with the historical figures that they are presenting. They are all very talented actresses, singers, dancers, and the whole story is told on a fairly small stage, which some might describe as intimate, some might describe as cramped, but what the stage may lack in visual appeal is more than made up for with the costumes and the talent of the women wearing them. I give 6 4 claps out of 5. I suggest you see it in a theater. The Brink of War is a docudrama about the high stakes. The Brink of War is a docudrama about the high stakes arms control talks between U.S. President Ronald Reagan and Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev in October 1986 in Reykjavik, Iceland. Reagan is played by Emmy winner Jeff Daniels, and Gorbachev is played by the fantastic English actor Jared Harris. Oscar winner J.K. Simmons plays Secretary of State George Shultz. We see both leaders arrive for the summit, and we get an immediate sense of who they are as people, as leaders, and what's at stake for their nations and for the country. As the movie goes on, we delve even more deeply into that, and in its well-balanced approach, we gain a real understanding of what each man was concerned about and holding fast to in terms of his positions on some of these issues. We also see the people that accompany them to the summit and get a sense for the tension that existed at that time between the Soviet Union and the United States, as shown in the way those people interact. In terms of the arms talks, what starts as an opportunity to move forward on some sort of arms control agreement turns into a really startling opportunity to move much farther than either man had intended when he arrived, and does end up setting the stage for greater arms control the following year between the 2 superpowers. The Brink of War is pretty well done, except for a few things that I'll mention here. I think a little bit more work could have gone into making Daniels and Harris look like Reagan and Gorbachev, respectively. And even though Jeff Daniels has some of Reagan's mannerisms down, the voice still sounds mainly like Jeff Daniels to me, and Harris is about the same situation in terms of his portrayal of Gorbachev. The movie itself, a summit between the leaders of the two superpowers, is high stakes, but a bit mundane at times. However, I did enjoy The Brink of War. I found it to be interesting, educational, and informative, and I would like to give it 3 claps out of 5 with the recommendation that when it's available, you stream it. You just watched my review of The Brink of War, and that movie led me to this weekend's Retro Reel review. This movie takes things much farther than in The Brink of War, but in a fictional scenario, and coincidentally, both movies feature Jared Harris in major roles. This is also the most recent movie I've used as a Retro Reel review, only about a year old, but it fits really well with The Brink of War and is one that I think has kind of flown under the radar, and I'd like more people to become aware of it and maybe check it out because it is of very high quality. A House of Dynamite. It's the 2020 political drama about what might happen if a single ICBM was launched at the United States, a nuclear attack by an unknown adversary. In this movie, we see a variety of people, civilian and military, in the US government and its military, trying to figure out what happened and how to respond. The stakes literally could not be higher because the President of the United States, played by Idris Elba, has to figure out what to do or if he should do anything, but also considering the implications, short and long term, of action versus inaction. This movie features a very accomplished ensemble cast. Besides Elba and Harris, we see Rebecca Ferguson, Anthony Ramos, Tracy Letts, and Jason Clarke. Oh, and it's directed by Catherine Bigelow, who gave us the multiple Oscar-winning movies Zero Dark 30 and The Hurt Locker, the latter of which won Best Picture and Best Director for Bigelow. A House of Dynamite is outstanding, all across the board. The cast is superb, from the stars all the way down through the minor characters, all of them combining to keep up the tension, keep things feeling real, but never allowing us to forget that these are human beings with lives and flaws, all trying to make the best of a terrible situation. Even though the basic premise of a single nuclear ICBM being launched at the United States from an unknown entity is a bit far-fetched, it does give us a lens from which we can look through and see what could happen if things get out of control regarding our nuclear weapons. The movie doesn't end as cleanly as some movie fans would probably like, but the ending is designed to get us to think and wonder about what we would do in these situations or what could happen if this situation were to present itself in real life. A House of Dynamite is tense, thrilling, entertaining, educational, and definitely thought-provoking. I highly recommend it. You can find it on Netflix. You've been watching This Weekend at the Movies. Thank you very much for sticking with me during my extended road trip vacation when the videos I posted were not as timely as I normally do them, but that ends with this video. I am back home, back in the groove, seeing as many new movies in theaters on Friday as I can, and then doing the reviews and posting them as soon as possible after that, in time for you to decide whether to see those movies opening week. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Oh, and make comments too. That also helps, and I love interacting with my fellow movie fans. In addition to my honest, spoiler-free reviews of new movies in theaters, on this channel you also get my retro reel reviews. I look back on great movies from the past with some relationship to that weekend's new theatrical releases, and from time to time I post other movie-related videos just for fun. My name is Dave McLean, actor, voiceover artist, and movie reviewer. Thank you very much for allowing me to share my love of movies with you.